Join me as I dive into a wild adventure to see if I can survive 200 years in the past and meet a mysterious king. In today's video, we'll explore the fascinating story of a black maid who time travels to meet a king, unraveling secrets that could change everything. The maid faces the daunting task of navigating a foreign world where she must adapt quickly to survive and uncover the truth about her unexpected journey. One moment, she had been scrubbing the marble floors of a modern mansion, her hands raw from the chemical cleaners and her back aching from hours of bending. The next moment, a blinding flash of light had consumed her vision, and the world as she knew it vanished entirely. When her eyes finally adjusted, she found herself standing in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by towering trees that seemed ancient beyond measure. She finds herself lost in a dense forest with no clear path in sight. The trees tower above her, their leaves rustling ominously in the wind. The canopy is so thick that only scattered beams of sunlight pierce through, creating an ethereal, almost mystical atmosphere. The air smells different here, earthy, untouched by pollution, filled with the scent of moss and wildflowers she doesn't recognize. Her modern cleaning uniform feels out of place, the synthetic fabric a stark contrast to the natural world surrounding her. Every snap of a twig makes her jump, her heart racing with anticipation. She spins around at each sound, expecting to see something or someone emerging from the shadows. The forest is alive with noises she's never heard before, the distant call of birds whose songs are unfamiliar, the rustle of small creatures moving through the undergrowth, the whisper of wind through branches that sounds almost like voices. Her breathing becomes shallow as panic threatens to overwhelm her. Where is she? When is she? How did she get here? The maid forces herself to move forward, pushing through her fear. She has no choice but to find civilization, to find answers. As she walks, her feet occasionally catch on roots hidden beneath layers of fallen leaves. Her shoes, designed for indoor work on polished floors, offer little protection against the rough terrain. Brambles catch at her clothing, leaving small tears in the fabric. She's thirsty, hungry, and completely disoriented, but something deep inside tells her to keep moving forward. As she walks, the landscape shifts from dense woods to rolling hills, giving her a glimpse of a sprawling castle in the distance. The transition is gradual at first, the trees becoming less dense, more light filtering through, until suddenly she breaks through the tree line and finds herself standing on an open hillside. The view that greets her takes her breath away. Below, stretching across the valley, are cultivated fields worked by people who appear as tiny figures from this distance. And beyond them, rising majestically from the landscape, is a castle unlike anything she's ever seen, except in history books or period films. The maid's eyes widen as she approaches the castle, its stone walls imposing and its flags fluttering in the breeze. The structure is massive, with multiple towers reaching toward the sky, their pointed roofs topped with colorful banners that snap in the wind. As she descends the hill and draws closer, she can make out more details: the arrow slits in the walls, the massive wooden gates reinforced with iron, the guards stationed at intervals along the battlements. The castle isn't just a building, it's a fortress designed to withstand sieges and protect those within. She wonders what kind of king rules over such a grand kingdom and what secrets he might be hiding. The banners bear an emblem she doesn't recognize, a golden lion rampant on a field of deep blue. Everything about the castle speaks of power, wealth, and authority. The maid realizes with growing certainty that she's no longer in her own time. The architecture, the methods of agriculture she glimpsed in the fields, the very air itself, everything confirms what seems impossible. She has traveled backward through time. As she reaches the outskirts of the castle grounds, she notices people going about their daily business. Merchants with carts, servants carrying bundles, guards changing shifts. Everyone is dressed in period clothing that confirms her suspicions. She has landed somewhere in the past, perhaps centuries ago. The women wear long dresses with aprons, their hair covered with caps or scarves. The men are in tunics, breeches, and leather boots. Some wear rough wool, others, clearly of higher status, are dressed in fine fabrics with elaborate embroidery. The maid hesitates at the edge of the bustling activity. She knows her modern appearance will draw unwanted attention. She needs to blend in, to find a way to enter the castle without raising suspicion. She watches carefully, noting how people interact, how they carry themselves, how servants keep their eyes lowered in the presence of nobles. She observes a group of servant women entering through a side gate, carrying baskets of laundry, and makes a quick decision. As she enters the castle, she's struck by its opulence, the chandeliers, the tapestries, the lavish furnishings. The interior is even more impressive than the exterior. Massive chandeliers hang from vaulted ceilings, their hundreds of candles casting a warm, flickering light over everything. The walls are adorned with enormous tapestries depicting battles, hunts, and courtly scenes, their colors still vibrant despite what must be their age. Furniture carved from dark wood and upholstered in rich velvets and brocades fills the great halls. The floors are covered with rushes in some areas and magnificent carpets in others. It's a world away from her simple life as a maid. In her own time, she had worked in a wealthy household, yes, but nothing compared to this level of grandeur. This isn't just wealth, this is power made visible, status proclaimed through every golden ornament and precious stone. The maid finds herself in a corridor lined with portraits of stern-faced men and elegant women, presumably the king's ancestors, all watching her with painted eyes that seem to follow her movement. She must quickly learn the customs and etiquette of the time to avoid drawing attention to herself. The maid realizes that her survival depends on her ability to adapt. She's fortunate that her work as a maid has already taught her to be observant, to move quietly, to make herself nearly invisible when necessary. These skills serve her well now as she navigates this strange new world. The maid observes the behavior of the other servants and courtiers, trying to blend in seamlessly. She watches how the lower servants scurry along the walls, never making eye contact with their betters. She notes how the higher-ranking servants, the stewards and ladies' maids, carry themselves with more dignity, but still maintain a respectful demeanor. She sees how courtiers interact with each other, the elaborate greetings, the careful language, the constant jockeying for position and favor. She learns to curtsy, to address people with the proper titles, and to navigate the complex hierarchy of the castle. The first time she attempts a curtsy, it's clumsy, but she practices whenever she's alone, perfecting the motion until it becomes second nature. She listens carefully to how people address each other. Your Grace, my Lord, my Lady, Mistress, Master. Each title carries specific meaning and must be used correctly. The hierarchy is strict and complex, not just nobles versus servants, but countless gradations of rank and status that determine who can speak to whom, who must defer to whom, who eats where and when. She's fortunate to encounter a kind kitchen maid named Marta early in her time at the castle. Marta, assuming the newcomer is simply a country girl unfamiliar with castle life, takes pity on her and helps her learn the ropes. Through Marta, she learns which corridors to use, which areas are forbidden to servants, when meals are served, and how to stay out of trouble. She acquires appropriate clothing, simple woolen dresses, an apron, a cap to cover her hair. The other servants occasionally give her curious looks, but in a castle employing dozens of people, new faces aren't entirely unusual. The historical context of the time period she lands in is one of great change and upheaval. Through conversations she overhears and stories Marta shares, the maid begins to understand the political situation. The kingdom is in a precarious position, surrounded by ambitious neighbors who watch for any sign of weakness. The king's reign is marked by tension and intrigue, with neighboring kingdoms vying for power and influence. Trade routes are contested, borders are disputed, and alliances shift like sand. The king himself is an enigmatic figure, rumored to be just and fair, but also fiercely protective of his kingdom. The servants speak of him with a mixture of respect and fear. They say he's a fair ruler who listens to his people's grievances, but that he's also a formidable warrior who's defended his realm against multiple invasions. The maid catches only occasional glimpses of him in those first weeks, a tall figure striding through the great hall, surrounded by advisors, a distant presence on the dais during formal occasions. His face is strong and weathered, his eyes sharp and assessing. He carries himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. As the maid settles into her role, she begins to notice things that trouble her. Whispered conversations that stop abruptly when others approach, furtive meetings in shadowed corners, the way certain nobles exchange meaningful glances across the great hall. She tells herself it's none of her business, that she should focus on surviving and finding a way home, but her curiosity and her innate sense of justice won't let her ignore what she's seeing. As tensions rise, the maid uncovers a hidden conspiracy that could threaten the kingdom, leading to an intense confrontation with the king that changes the course of history. It happens quite by accident. One evening, tasked with delivering fresh linens to a guest's chamber, she takes a wrong turn in the castle's confusing maze of corridors. Finding herself in an unfamiliar wing, she hears voices coming from behind a partially open door. Something about the urgent, secretive tone makes her pause. She discovers that a group of powerful nobles is secretly plotting against the king, seeking to overthrow him and claim the throne for themselves. The conversation she overhears chills her blood. Lord Blackwood, the king's own cousin, is leading the conspiracy. He speaks of the king's weakness, his soft policies toward the common people, his failure to expand the kingdom's borders through conquest. The other conspirators, Lord Ashford, Count Ravencroft, and several others whose names she doesn't catch, voice their agreement. They speak of poison, of a planned ambush during the king's next hunting trip, of how they'll seize control and install Lord Blackwood on the throne. The maid backs away from the door silently, her heart pounding so loudly she fears they'll hear it. Her hands shake as she clutches the linens. She knows she must act quickly to warn the king and prevent a catastrophe. But how can a simple servant, a stranger, a time traveler, gain an audience with the king? Who would believe her? The conspirators are powerful nobles. She's nobody. If she speaks out and isn't believed, she'll surely be executed for making false accusations against lords of the realm. For 3 agonizing days, she wrestles with what to do. She considers telling Marta, but fears putting her friend in danger. She considers leaving, fleeing the castle and the kingdom entirely, but her conscience won't allow it. Finally, desperation drives her to take an enormous risk. She learns the king's routine, discovers that he walks in the castle's garden each dawn before the court awakens. On the 4th morning, she slips into the garden and waits. When the king appears, accompanied by only a single guard, she steps forward and drops to her knees. "Your Majesty, I beg your forgiveness for this intrusion, but I have information vital to your safety and the kingdom's future." Her voice trembles but remains clear. The king stops, studying her with those sharp eyes. "Who are you? How did you get past the guards?" "I'm a servant, Your Majesty. I came to warn you of a plot against your life." The guard moves to seize her, but the king raises a hand. "Speak, but know that false accusations against nobles carry the penalty of death." The maid takes a deep breath and tells him everything she overheard. She names the conspirators, describes their plan in detail, includes specific phrases and details only someone who was truly present could know. The king listens without interruption, his expression unreadable. When she finishes, silence stretches between them. Finally, he speaks. "These are serious charges. If true, they constitute high treason. If false, you will die for speaking them. Why should I believe a servant I've never seen before?" The maid meets his eyes, a boldness that would normally be unthinkable. "Because I have nothing to gain by lying, Your Majesty, and everything to lose. I'm not seeking reward or advancement. I'm not settling a grudge. I'm simply trying to prevent a terrible crime." Something in her voice, or perhaps in her eyes, convinces him. "Very well, I will investigate your claims. If they prove true, you will be rewarded. If false..." He doesn't need to finish the threat. Over the following days, the king quietly sets a trap. He announces plans for a grand hunting expedition, exactly as the conspirators anticipated, but he also positions loyal soldiers throughout the hunting grounds and posts spies to watch the accused conspirators. When Lord Blackwood and his allies make their move, attempting to ambush what they believe is a vulnerable king, they instead find themselves surrounded by armed guards. The confrontation is dramatic. Lord Blackwood, realizing they've been discovered, tries to bluff his way out, but the king produces evidence gathered by his spies, letters, testimonies from servants who'd been threatened into silence, and the maid's own detailed account. Faced with undeniable proof, the conspirators are arrested. The trial is swift. Lord Blackwood and the key conspirators are sentenced to death, their co-conspirators to exile and confiscation of lands. The kingdom is shaken, but survives. The king, grateful beyond measure, summons the maid to the throne room. Before the assembled court, he thanks her publicly and offers her a reward: gold, land, position. But the maid, knowing she doesn't truly belong in this time, asks instead for his help in understanding the circumstances that brought her here. She confesses the truth of her origins, expecting disbelief or accusations of madness. Instead, the king reveals something unexpected. The castle has a secret, a chamber deep beneath the foundations where, according to legend, time itself bends and flows differently. His ancestors had stumbled upon it centuries ago and built the castle to guard it. Perhaps this is how she arrived, and perhaps it holds the key to her return. The maid's journey not only transformed her life, but also impacted the kingdom's future. By saving the king and exposing the conspiracy, she changed the course of history. The kingdom, under the king's continued rule, would prosper rather than descend into the civil war that would have followed his assassination. The policies the conspirators despised, fair treatment of common people, emphasis on trade over conquest, diplomatic solutions to conflicts, would continue and ultimately make the kingdom stronger and more stable than any of its neighbors. As for the maid herself, she faces a choice: stay in this time where she has found purpose and gratitude, or return to her own era where she is just another invisible servant. The decision isn't easy. This time period has its hardships: lack of modern conveniences, rigid social hierarchies, dangers she never faced before. But here she has made a difference. Here she matters. If you enjoyed this time travel adventure, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Would you take the risk of traveling through time? Could you survive in a world so different from your own? What would you do if you uncovered a conspiracy that could change history? Share your thoughts with us and join us next time for another incredible journey through time and possibility.